The Loop.
The Loop.
You have the divine spark.
The Loop.
Do or do not. There is no try.
The Loop.
Give me your roar.
Hey there, this is Misha, and welcome to episode number 18 of The Loop. Today's conversation is with Preston VanderWeyst, who is a former software engineer at Microsoft, where he was for several years, and he's also worked for a lot of other small and large tech companies. He's quite a bit of experience as a hiring manager, as a career coach, and also as a mentor. So in today's conversation, we talk mostly about the job interview process in general for tech companies, and specifically the hiring manager interview and sort of the misconceptions people have about that initial meeting with a hiring manager, sort of what they think the hiring manager is looking for versus what they're really looking for, and good questions, bad questions to ask, sort of what to expect in that, and a bunch of other tips and advice that Preston has from his many, many years as a hiring manager. So I thought this was a really good and chill conversation. We get into a few sort of funny examples of how the interview can go wrong. So I think you'll enjoy that. But yeah, overall, it's just a really useful conversation and perspective on this interview, which applies to really any tech company that you're going in for. So if that sounds interesting, then I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. Hey Preston, how's it going?
It is going pretty well. How's it going with you?
I'm doing all right. So I'm excited for today's conversation. We were talking a little bit before this about your experience and sort of some of the potential topics we could be discussing. And I think this topic of hiring managers and your perspective as a hiring manager came up. And I think we're going to get into that today. So maybe a good starting point would be to share a little bit about your experience. I know you were in Microsoft and some other tech companies, but yeah, it'd be great to hear a little bit more about what companies you're at, sort of what you were doing there, just very, very briefly, and then maybe your experience as a hiring manager and what that looks like.
Yeah, I was at Microsoft for 5 or so years, and I've been at several other companies, mostly as a hiring manager. I think I started out, I was a developer for a while and transitioned into management. So I've been hiring people for a long time. Probably the thing I want to share about that is that as the hiring manager, I think sometimes people come in, they might have a misconception about what our mindset is or where we are, kind of what the relationship is like. And I know I had, it was actually a recruiter when I was applying for a job who started me off on this. He's like, the hiring manager is actually on your side. And I was like, no, there's no way. This is, they're scrutinizing me. They're going to judge me. It's a very judgmental situation. I'm like, no. And he's like, no, think about it. And I know this from my own perspective, and I've seen it for real. I've already put in the time. I'm kind of invested in you. I've read your resume. I'm excited about some of the technologies you've worked on. I want to know about this project you listed. I've pictured you working on my team. God, what would it be like if this person's on my team? And then I want to bring you in and we're going to talk and we're going to see what you can do. And hopefully things go well. So that's kind of the perspective I wish people would come in with, that it really is I'm on your side. I want this to go well. Of course, you do have to perform, but don't feel afraid,
Do you feel like sometimes, well, one reason for that is obviously just the whole expectation around an interview, but then do you also think that going into that conversation with a hiring manager, which is usually the first or second conversation you have in an interview process, do you think that sometimes a hiring manager does ask these obviously really difficult questions and maybe does come off as a bit judgmental? So
yeah, there's a certain amount of, depending on who they are, but sometimes there's kind of that, well, tell me about your experience with C++.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, like I'll give you an example. I'll ask a question and I'll say it's a coding question. So we get into the coding question and I'm like, okay, take a bunch of integers and I want you to write a function that tells me the two largest in that group of integers, right? And I was specifically vague there because I want you to ask the clarifying question. I'm like setting that up on the tee, and I think you can watch for, what does the hiring manager want? They want you to ask for clarity. They want that you understand the question. They want you to probe and make sure that you're not going to miss something. So when you come in, you'll be like, oh, well, I forgot to look for, negative values. And so that's really the questions. Look for them setting you up for success. And so the question, they would ask, well, is it an array of integers? Well, yeah, let's say it's an array. And then, you might go, well, are they sorted? Like, well, and the hiring manager's going to go, no, they're not sorted. So that's immediately like, well, should I sort them? So it really is kind of I'm putting it on a tee and I want to see you perform.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So really just starting with that more positive, optimistic mindset that they're actually here to maybe hire me, right?
Yeah.
So
I'd love to hire you because then
yeah.
I could stop looking for candidates and stop reviewing resumes, all day.
Yeah. Well, let's talk more about what happens in that conversation usually. I mean, obviously, it really depends on the role and the company and so forth. But I guess from your experience, let's say at Microsoft and some of these other tech companies, you were in engineering roles mostly, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So
yeah,
like, what kind of conversations did you get straight into technical stuff? Like, what kind of conversations did you have as a hiring manager?
It's usually, so you're going to ask about, the traditional, tell me about yourself. Really, that we're judging. I want to know how well you can communicate. It's also kind of an icebreaker, so you're not so stressed. I did have a candidate one time just be totally locked at that point. And I was like, well, are you nervous? And they're like, yeah, I'm just really nervous. And I'm like, well, would it help you to know that I'm nervous too? And I've done this hundreds of times. And they're like, why are you nervous? I'm like, I have to come up with answers, and I have to, you could ask me something I don't know. You could dive into something I've never heard of. And they're like, so we're both nervous. Okay, so let's figure it out and let's work together. But usually you come in and start off with some sort of, tell me about yourself type of thing. Because I want to see, what have you done? What do you like? What are you interested? What are you excited about? And then it goes in pretty fast into technical questions. I think nowadays, most of the big companies are doing the behavioral questions, which are, they're not writing code. They're not telling me about, write a code or solve the problem. It's really tell me about your experiences. And those are important too. Those are questions to bring out. How are you going to react? How have you done? How are you going to behave in a situation in the future based upon what you've done in the past? And so being able to do those, provide the details of what happened and so on is very important. It's also another measurement of communication. If you come to me, we're working together at this point, and you come and you find out that there's a ship blocking bug, right? I need to know that you're going to be able to tell me the story. What's the situation? What's the bug? What are the options? So on. And you're practicing for that in an interview. You're demonstrating that.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, it's just so hard sometimes, right? When you're in that situation and you feel like you're being judged. And like I've had many conversations on the podcast where people have said something similar, like, hey, you just treat them as a future colleague, or like you're just having a conversation with a colleague, right? And you are trying to explain this problem to them. And there is something more like psychological or emotional about this, where you need to be in a certain mindset before you can really just relax and have that sort of conversation. Otherwise, yeah.
Well, sure. There's a lot on the line,
out.
right? I mean, there's a job on the line that could be a 6-figure paying job, right? And so there's the stress is there that I really want this job and I don't want to blow it. And I think, some people do blow it. I've blown it.
Yeah. Well, I'm comes with a bit of practice as well, and I wonder from your experience, like when someone's come in and they don't do a great job, or maybe you feel like they're a good candidate, but they're just not doing really well in the interview. I mean, do you how do you can you save that situation? Can you do something about that? Can you say like, hey, I think you've got great skills, but interview like it didn't really work out very well. Like, why don't you come back, try again later? Does that ever happen?
It does. It is pretty rare though.
Yeah.
I think I think a lot of times the companies now, and this is more recent than we've done this, having the so did they demonstrate this? So imagine there's a checklist of things, which there are, about did they demonstrate it, and if they weren't able to demonstrate it to a depth you wanted to see, you could say it's inconclusive. And so I didn't know the technical, and I've done that. We've done a coding problem. They started
Mm-hmm.
off in a wrong direction and really got themselves kind of wrapped around the axle and couldn't get out, and we ran out of time. And so when I went and reported it, I'm like, I don't know. It's inconclusive on whether they can code or not, because they really, I
Mm-hmm.
think they just made a mistake,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll bring them back and see if they can correct it. Um,
Okay. So
yeah,
that doesn't happen too often, but
yeah,
it has happened.
great.
Yeah.
I will caution people, just a bit of advice. Um, Try not to blow it in other ways, right? Try not to
How
like
so?
I had someone. Here's a good example. I had someone come in to my office,
Mm-hmm.
and we're chit chatting. We're going to talk about. They went over the resume, and I go, well, what do you what's your experience with agile development?
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, agile development. Oh, I can't stand agile development. I worked on it one time, and the agile development was just terrible. I hated it, and so on. I'm sitting there, and right behind me on the wall is the Agile Manifesto. So clearly, take a look around. Be
Mm.
aware of your surroundings. Other thing I tell
Yeah.
people: no matter what you think of Star Trek or Lord of the Rings, just keep it at best neutral, because there's a lot of techie people that like Star Trek and the Lord of the Rings. So don't say those are the worst things ever. Those are the kind of,
Uh
just don't piss people off, like, type of thing.
yeah. Yeah, there's a sort of a fine line between voicing your opinion here and just, being critical or not really having a point to voicing your opinion, I guess.
Yep.
Because like what
Well,
I mean, because you've asked the person the question about what do they think about agile, and they're being honest,
yeah,
right? But they're not being very mindful, I guess, or
exactly.
thoughtful of
Yeah.
their surroundings.
By the way, and I'm guilty of that too. I had one that
Yeah.
someone was asking. We were talking about working on mail, and how, yeah, I sent a mail, and it I didn't get the mail for this interview or something like that. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's probably Exchange. That's a terrible product. And turns out this person was like one of the architects of Exchange. Oops.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tricky because you just don't know. So I mean,
Yep.
general rule of thumb is to not badmouth
Correct.
anything, right? Anyone, because you really don't
Correct.
know.
Yep.
So you can just be constructive about it.
Yep.
Um, but I wonder why that happens. I mean, not to get into it too much, but it's like, why do people do that? Why are people? Is that just because how they normally are in their day to day, or
Yeah. I think software developers are kind of skeptics, right? We're kind of
yeah,
critical
right,
thinkers, detailed nitpicker, which helps us, in our job, right?
for
You
sure.
you don't let any detail get by you. That's an important part of the
Mhm.
job, but you do have to be careful not to just rant. Let's be positive. You want to work here. Um,
Yeah,
an important question
yeah.
does come up sometimes. You'll ask them, you know, are you familiar with our product? And they're like, oh yeah, yeah, I've used your product, like Microsoft. I use Microsoft Word all the time.
Mm.
And be like, well, what change would you make to the product? And that's when they're asking a fair question, first of all, to see if you are familiar with the product, but then see
Hmm.
if you have any suggestions, see what kind of innovative thinker you are. Um, that's a
Hmm.
tough one, because I mean, Word is pretty good, right? What are we really
Mm.
going to add to that?
Yeah, that's true. What one thing I just thought of just because you asked that question that Slack does. So I use Slack for my team and at Keras, and we like one of the things is when you have a link that you want to share, what you can do is you can highlight some words that you've written or copied and pasted, and then when you paste if you've highlighted those words and you paste the link, it automatically changes those words into the link, into the hyperlink, instead of like right click, add hyperlink.
Correct.
Right. And so it's like a really small like UX thing, but it's like it's so much easier. I'm like, oh, why doesn't Google Docs have this? And I have to like edit, like input the link every time. So there's definitely ways to improve it.
Or Google Docs, when you click on the link and then it goes, do you really want to go to the link? I clicked on it.
Yeah. There's a lot of, I don't know how much effort they're putting into Google Docs nowadays, but I'm sure there's
good tool though. I mean,
I use it all the time.
Yeah.
Anyways, so what else? What else can we talk about here with the hiring manager interview? Because you're talking about questions. So one of the things. Yeah, go ahead.
So I would say, and it's a little bit of kind of preparation for the conversation. Like if you're going to be working with me, right, and we're going to be like we're working together already, there's just things you're going to know, right? Like who's the CEO of the company is a good question, because that's something I work at this company. I'm concerned. What products do we have? Are you generally familiar with the products? One of my best stories is I worked at a company that what we did is we wrote a mobile app that told you the fastest route to get to a place, right? And so it would say where you are and where you're going. Here's the fastest route to get there and how long it will take. And a guy was 15 minutes late to the interview, and I asked him, "Oh, it's fine. Don't worry about that." He's like, "Oh, I don't know what it was. Traffic was so bad, I couldn't figure out. I wish there was a way that we could predict traffic so I would know when to leave."
So you know why you're here.
It turns out that's the job you're applying for. So if he would just would have looked up, he could have seen what our app was.
Yeah, that seems really basic, but I guess when you have lots of interviews or something,
correct.
I don't know.
And I have people, also look me up. Look me up on LinkedIn. Look to your, if you get the names of the interviewers, but don't stalk people. That's not good either.
I actually had a question around that. So like, I think that's advice that's given quite often, and especially if you're going in for like a final interview, you want to sort of see who you're going to meet, and maybe you're meeting a finance director. Okay, gotta get the numbers ready, like whatever. But what is appropriate in these situations? Like you've looked up someone on LinkedIn, maybe you even Googled them, whatever. You have some information about them. Is it appropriate to say something? Be like, oh, hey, I looked you up and I found this, or I noticed on LinkedIn that you did this or that. Is that weird for someone to do that if they were to ask you some question in the interview, or is it okay?
I think it's okay as long as it's not creepy. And I think sometimes people will ask questions, kind of making assumptions. So they'll see something on your bio or whatever, and they'll make assumption that means that you probably also like this. I would say anything you're talking about in someone's LinkedIn, or especially if you find a Facebook page or something like that, be cautious. Like sometimes people will be like, you like dogs or something like that, and then they'll go into this whole rant about dogs and how they love dogs, and you're like, oh, dogs are okay.
Yeah.
Or they'll, although sometimes, if you find out where they went to school, and I don't know if that could be just me, but when people find out where I went to school and they support that football team or whatever, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, that's casual enough.
But try not to either probe or question it, like, well, why do you support this or something like that? But
that'd be weird.
And I would reference it too, not because we don't know each other. So it'd be like, hey, I saw on your LinkedIn that you volunteered in the high school to help with computer science. I'd be like, oh yeah, I did do that. And how did that go? And how did you get involved in that? And that's interesting.
But more of an open question and just sort of, definitely not being like super inquisitive or like, um, yeah, that would create some tension,
Yeah, it's just
or assumptions are not good because then you could be wrong and then you just look kind of dumb, and
yeah, exactly.
yeah, it's not a good place to start, so, or end.
Yep.
And
I
then
brought
what?
up that example about
Yeah.
volunteering, and I think that's sometimes people can ask about that, like things about what you're interested in.
Mhm.
Kind of talking a little bit about what questions you should ask and how you should ask them. Like I've
Mhm.
had people ask me, does this company support mentoring in local schools? And sometimes some companies do, some companies don't. If you ask that, be genuine about it, right? Ask something if you're actually interested in it, and it
Mhm.
may almost seem like something like, no, we don't. And if that person would be like, well, I would love to be involved setting that up because I'm actually interested
Mhm.
in it. Like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, that would be great. Like,
Mm.
or do we have mentors? Do we get assigned mentors? Well, yeah, not. I would love to help set that program up. Those are the types of things you want to ask.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, what? Why are you asking? Why are you
Yeah,
asking it? Is it just a question you looked up online, or is it something that
exactly.
you have some curiosity around?
Yeah, or would you
Genuinely.
run with it, right? Or something that you
Yeah.
would champion,
Hmm.
so on.
That makes sense. And you were talking about this before, but you're mentioning some questions, like the importance of asking good questions in an
Hmm.
interview, which comes up obviously a lot. And I think, obviously, if someone doesn't ask any questions, that's a huge red flag. And if they ask the wrong types of questions, it's like, okay, or it's like sort of boring questions, it's like, okay, this is not that exciting. What are some examples from your hiring manager times and career of like good questions, bad questions?
Okay, let's start with good questions. We'll start off positive. Um,
Okay.
Ask what it's like to work with me, right? I think those are fair questions and good questions to probe
Mm,
into. Um, what do we do? Do we meet in the morning? Do we have a daily stand up? What is the workflow like? Those type of questions are really good. Like, what am I going to be doing on a daily
mm,
basis? You know, is there do what tools do we use? You know, and be open to like, oh, what is that tool like? What does that track? Oh, I've used a tool
mm.
like that. But kind of get into what you're going to be doing on a daily basis, how the workflow is going to go. Do you use Agile? Do you use Kanban? Those are really, really cool questions because we're working together at that point, right? How do we work together? How do we communicate? What kind of tool do you use? Slack? Do we use email a lot? Types of things. What are the preferred methods of communication?
Yeah, those are great, right? Because like it's so hard to know what it's going to be like to
Hmm.
work at the company, and I think this is sort of implicit, but people don't realize that it's like you're only going to spend like 45 minutes with a hiring manager, and then maybe like another few minutes, right? But this is the person
Right.
you're going to be working with, and so it's like so important. This is probably like the most important, like for yourself, it's the most important interview.
Yep.
Obviously, you have to pass other rounds and everything, but
Right.
just for your own assessment of what the heck is going on, like I want to know exactly what it's like to be sitting next to you or to be working with you.
Right.
And if I misjudge that or don't ask the right questions or miscalculate it, then I'm going to be walking into something potentially that I'm not as excited about, or that
Right.
is a bit different than what is on the job description or my expectation, because I didn't ask those questions, and
Right.
it's up to me to do that, right? It's not like you're not
Yeah.
going to tell me everything.
Gives you the vibe, the feel.
Yeah.
It also gives you a little bit about, is this a really organized company or is it a really
Mm,
chaotic company? If the answer is we meet every morning at 9 o'clock and you
mm,
report in your stand up, we have a prioritized backlog, and you're like, oh, okay, things are good. To be like, well, yeah, we try to meet a couple times a week. Then you got a little bit of a loosely coupled company, and
mm-hmm,
there's benefits and drawbacks to each one. So, but
mm-hmm.
it does get that feel.
Got it. Okay.
So the other type of question I recommend people ask is something that's important about the customer that may be a little bit outside of your realm. So the example I give is people ask, what are your competitors? Or even better if you phrase it, what are our competitors? You kind of have that language that you're already on the job, because it's something that the hiring manager is usually pretty well aware of. even in most people on the team know who the customers are, know who the competitors are, know who,
Mm-hmm.
they're reviewing the products of other people and so on. But it's not something you're generally expected to know. You might know if it's a popular company, but if it's a lower end company, you might not know who the competitors are. And that's something that is interesting and you can start to talk about. And it's a topic that usually they can talk about and answer fairly easy. You can respond to it and probe in, but it's not something you're expected to know a lot about. And so it's kind of a cool area to dig into, because customer value is really, what we're going to end up focusing on. Customer value, how we measure against our competitors, how competitive is the field, who are they, so on. Do you have experience with them? But it's not necessarily something that I would like do a whole competitive analysis if you're being a software developer. Now, if you're, of course, product manager, then, or business type of person, that's different. But software developers, you might not know who the competitors are, so you can get into that.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. These are all like good, fair questions to ask.
You want to know my least favorite question?
Yeah. Shoot.
So what is the work-life balance like at this job? What do you want us to say? We work like 6 hours a day and just goof off all the time. And, it's a job. We work hard because we like to do what we're doing. We like to learn. And sometimes we have to work a lot, but people, I don't know, they want to somehow know, or I don't know. Sometimes it seems like they want to know, like, that we work really and it's going to be great and exciting, or they're like, I don't know, that seems like it's working too hard. Like, I can assure people that you will work hard as a software developer, but in the best circumstances, you will be learning the most in that circumstance, and you'll do it and you'll love doing it.
Yeah, I can see both perspectives here, because on one side, you definitely have some, especially like startups and whatever, certain CEOs that really set this culture of like you're gonna get emails on the weekend, like we expect you to answer those, and then you have that, right? You have that in certain places, and that's not healthy. Or it's okay maybe for a brief amount of time if you're there and
correct.
You're young and you can do that, but then on the other hand, like from the hiring manager perspective, it's sort of like you have a certain level of maturity, right? Like, hey, you're all like, everyone's responsible for their own work, and if you need to go home at 5 to do whatever, like, you need to go home, and if you're tired, whatever, right? And I think you're sort of expecting people to manage their own sort of emotions and how they're relating to their work, and at the same time still be committed to big projects, and sometimes you're gonna have to work a little bit harder. So I can see both perspectives, where people are a bit afraid, like they're stepping into something that could be sort of crappy, but on the other hand, from your perspective, it's like, well, it's gonna be up and down just like anything else.
Yeah, those type of questions, I'd say Glassdoor. Look at the reviews. Yeah. If you're asking the hiring manager what the work-life balance is, that means it's an indication you're worried about it. And if you're worried about it, and what's the hiring manager going to say? I mean, I give the same kind of answer when people ask it, like, we work hard, but we work hard because, there's a competitive market, and you're hopefully, if you're working hard at it, you're learning a lot. But I do tell people, like you mentioned, never write the check you can't cash. If you need to be home for a birthday, you need to be home for a birthday. Don't miss your wedding anniversary. Don't miss the kids' recital. Things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think. Yeah, there's probably different ways to ask that question to get more information about, like, what is it like, what they want to know, what it's like to work there, right?
Yep.
Right. So like, what are, I don't know, what are good ways to find that, like, find out what it's like, and in turn you'll understand what the work-life balance is like. Like, if everyone is not allowed to go to their friend's birthday because Preston's like, sorry, like, you have to do
birthdays.
this. No birthdays allowed. Like, I want to know that, right? So,
Glassdoor.
Glassdoor. I mean, people are gonna put it on there, right? If anything negative is gonna be on there, right? So
I take that with a little grain of salt, though. It's a lot like Amazon reviews. There's somebody that hates every product that is bought and sold.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure, for sure. What other kind of questions do you think are maybe not great?
When do we get raises? That's always another
Mm,
one. How
that
often do
seems
we
like a
get
bad
promotions? Kind
question.
of
Yeah,
what
so
I listed as kind of the entitled questions. Those are fair questions. I mean, ask HR that though. Ask
hmm.
more the logistics people, not your hiring, not the hiring manager, not the interviewers in there. Um, Questions like, "What is your least favorite thing about working here?" I've gotten that
Hmm.
question a lot. Those are what I call the put me on the spot questions. I
Hmm.
mean, much
You
like
don't
we
like
talked
that?
about earlier, I'm not going to put you on the spot, nor do I want you to throw your previous employer under the bus. I'm going to give you an answer that's very politically correct.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because because that's what you're supposed to do, right? And every job has good and bad things, and that's really
Mm-hmm.
kind of a put you on the spot. I've had that people
Mm.
ask me much related to the work life balance, like how many hours did you work last week? That's another one I've gotten a couple times.
Mm.
Okay,
Mm.
those are
And in those
just
situations, is it always just like, is it just that perspective or where that person's coming from? It's pretty much just going to be a no go for you, or are there situations where you still maybe you ask them their motivation for asking that question and sort of have this
yeah.
conversation around it?
Sometimes I'll have to probe back, like
Yeah,
you know, but it's
like what do
it's
you
not
mean?
a
Yeah.
it's like a light yellow flag when they ask
Okay.
questions like that. If they
Okay.
start
Okay.
asking more, like, okay, and you get through that question, like, okay, and then they go, well, how big is my monitor going to be?
That could be quite important, though. It could be quite important. I don't know. How big is my
or
table?
or
Do I have a table? Do
if
I have
I
a
get
desk?
if I get stuck, is there going to be anybody to answer my questions?
Hmm.
Like, yeah, there is.
Hmm.
And if there's not, then yeah, there's a problem. Will they always be able to answer your questions? And they'll be right there? No, but that's just kind of the way things work. It
Hmm.
reveals kind of an over worry about things. And if you're really worried about that, um, I don't know. I wouldn't. I'd ask the question, but be very or give a reason why.
Yeah.
Like, or I want to like maybe you can tie it into the mentoring part of it. Like, uh, will I have a mentor I can ask questions about, or is it okay to ask? Do we use Slack to ask questions or something like
Hmm.
that rather than be
Hmm.
more kind of
Right.
will there be
Right.
anybody around? Like, yeah, of
Just it's
course.
just like this is a difference between just like a very it's like a very like blanket sort of question that you've Googled that's
Right.
not really tailored or there's no context around it, and maybe that person had a bad experience in their past
Yeah.
job or their current job, right? And like they want to make sure that um, there is good communication or clear communication in the company or like whatever, right? But I think providing that context is
Right.
important.
And definitely, if you don't get the answer you want, or it is still a little bit of a concern, you can do a
Mm,
follow up question to ask that too. But be careful
yeah.
about, the context of that. But really, I mean, you if you want to have a discussion about a bad experience you had, let's have that discussion, and we can work
Hmm.
through it. And then that also tells me as the hiring manager, um, when we onboard this person, like your first 30 days or 60 days or
Mm,
whatever, I'm going to make sure that they get their questions answered if that's something that's kind of an insecurity of them, and make
mm.
sure that they know what we usually do that anyway, but know what the communication channels are if someone is really worried about that.
I'm jumping around here a little bit, but they sort of got to the end of well, probably the interview asking questions. But I guess in the beginning, are you just asking technical questions? You're asking, tell me about yourself, sort of understanding their narrative, where they're coming from. Are
Hmm.
you going through their resume also, or is
Yeah,
that something
yeah,
you are? Okay.
yeah. I go through their resume and then I kind of expect them to go through it when I ask them, "Tell me a little bit about yourself." But I will ask specific when I get the resume, right? I've looked at it, I like it. There's some cool things on there when I talk about. I
Mm-hmm.
mark it up, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh, they have this experience. I want to specifically ask them about that because it's either applicable, it's interesting, or it's unusual. Either way,
Mm,
it's going to be a good conversation. I can see what they like to do. Um, which, by the way,
mm.
if you don't want to do something all day, don't put it on your resume because it'd be like, oh, like we way back when we used to ship products, someone would have like installer experience, be like, oh yeah, that is great. And they're going to be a full-time installer, and they'll be like, oh, I hate that. So
Right. Yeah, should be clear on what you enjoy.
I love writing Perl scripts.
Yeah.
Excellent. You're going to write all our Perl scripts. There are some people that love Perl scripts. I have no problem with that.
Right. Okay.
But we do go through the resume. I go through, like I said, kind of top to bottom, point out the things. If there's something I have experience with, like a common thing, we'll also talk about that. Like, oh yeah, I worked on that too. What was your experience like?
Got it. And I guess you don't really give them feedback within this interview or at the end. Like they just sort of, it's really hard to tell sometimes if you've done well. Like maybe the conversation goes okay, but that's just because you're a friendly guy and you're going to talk to everyone in the same way, more or less. You're asking them a lot of similar questions. But do you give people a sense of, like, towards the end, like, oh, I want to talk again, or let's move forward, or do you just sort of take some time to assess what you've discussed in that conversation?
I usually don't give feedback.
Okay.
Unless it's probably not going to move forward, right? So if I meet with somebody and I know for sure that we're not going to move forward to the next step, and there are really specific things I can give them feedback with, I will.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll be like, yeah, and I'll tell them, I go, yeah, in the future, which is, if I say something in the future, that probably indicates you're not going to get the job. Mm-hmm. Or next time, or you might want to watch out for, or something like that. Because I do want to give people feedback, because I do think it's valuable for them to hear that. Because sometimes they don't. They just get they don't know what happened. Did I not like this?
Mm-hmm.
How did the coding question go? Did I ramble too much? I don't know. But sometimes I will give feedback. But usually if it's like we're not moving forward.
Got it. Okay.
I have had also, people come into an interview, ask them something technical, and they don't really get it, right? They're not. It's a binary tree, for example, right? And we're gonna, I traverse a binary tree, blah blah blah, and then they just don't know what a binary tree is. They don't have experience with it. In some ways, that can be a really cool experience, because now I get to teach them something. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, I'll show you what a binary tree is and see if you can pick it up. So I'll give you a lesson for like 10 minutes, 5 minutes maybe. The better thing about that is, we talked about pretend like we're working together. At that point, we are working together, because I'm at the whiteboard writing something. You're next to me and you're trying to learn what I'm telling you. And that can be a really good experience. And be like, okay, did they pick something up? Was I able to teach them? And did they? Right. Okay, yeah, I get that. I mean,
so that could still be a good outcome.
Totally. Yeah, I've had many people that I've hired that have asked me, like, I don't think I got that coding question correct. Mm-hmm. I'm like, well, you didn't, but that wasn't the point of it. Yeah. I saw how you thought. I saw your thought process. Mm-hmm. You made a good approach. Maybe you didn't understand this, but I remember I taught you. I asked you why, if you would do this, and taught you a little lesson, and you picked it up and implemented it. And yeah, that's working together, and that's what I want. Someone on my team.
For sure. Got it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think that's a pretty good view on how you run these meetings with potential candidates, and probably a lot of other hiring managers take a similar approach. I'm sure some are a little bit more technical, some are more behavioral, some are more friendly than others. Just the variety of individuals you might meet. But right. Is there anything else that you wanted to share around that, around the hiring manager interview, and sort of tips or advice?
Looking at my notes a little bit.
Yeah, please.
Oh, kind of, much like we talk about ending an interview or starting it. Should you ask when you're going to hear back?
Okay. Seems like a fairly innocent question.
It is a fairly innocent question, and I would ask it because it shows a little eagerness, but be like, it's a casual, like, when am I going to see you again? Or, hey, when should I expect to hear back? Or, something like that. Almost like a handshake, goodbye, like we're going to meet again type of thing. I think
Mm-hmm.
it does show eagerness. I do
Okay.
like it when people ask, especially it gives me an opportunity to set the expectation with people, because sometimes different companies, Microsoft in particular, the machine just runs slower.
Mm-hmm.
We could have nailed it, and it'd be like you're not going to hear back for like a week sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Just the way that people are busy. Maybe we have
Mm-hmm.
other candidates. You also find out, are we hiring on the roll, or are we waiting for other candidates, something
Yeah.
like that. But
Yeah.
it is a good way to kind of say goodbye, like, hey, when are we going to see each other again? Like, oh, you should hear back by tomorrow. Oh, good, I'll hear back tomorrow.
Yeah. That's also just a little bit of peace of mind.
Yeah.
So
But
okay, you're waiting 2 weeks or something. It's normal for Amazon or whatever.
correct.
But
But
yeah,
you do get to set the expectation sometimes, like, right now we're pretty busy. It might be a week.
yeah, yeah. That's good though. That's good. That's a good question.
Yep.
Cool. Well, I think we covered a lot there. So I know you're doing career coaching and different
Yep.
types of coaching, helping people get through this sort of interview and
Yeah.
technical interviews and all that. Could you talk a little bit more about that and like what kind of people are you helping? What kind of coaching are you doing right now, and sort of what could people expect from a coaching session with you?
Yeah, I do coaching all the way from kind of, the different phases, like how to do a phone interview, that first initial screen, what you want to
Mm-hmm.
show, how to go through the loop, the interview loop. That's what you're gonna have for 5 people. How to
Mm-hmm.
prepare, like we talked about with questions and who the CEO is, and how to answer the questions, the behavioral questions. I think it's pretty standard now, and it
Mm-hmm.
really is what I want to work with people who, I mean, people are interviewing for these jobs. They have the skills. Let's get them to show off those skills. So I do a lot of practice, both in coding. So we'll do hands-on kind of coding questions. I can either be the person on your shoulder giving you advice, like, do you want to think about a hash map? Or I can pretend like I'm the interviewer and just be like, okay, it's interesting. Have you tested for bugs?
Mm-hmm.
Type of thing. But to get people to practice, to do it several times, to know that just the things, where they're gonna be like, like I tell people, you went quiet for 30 seconds. Don't do that during the coding interview, but really walking them through practicing with mock interviews. Um, that's really
Mm-hmm.
where I want to be. Get people so they can show off the skills that they have.
Awesome. And do you do this at all levels, or is it like manager,
I do it all
SDE?
levels.
Like,
I think all the way
okay,
from getting your first job, and all the way up to the principal type developers and management too. I coach people
got it.
through the management. Um, I also do the coding interviews. I walk people through algorithms and make sure
Mhm.
that they know the data structures and so on. Those are really good things to practice also.
How much time do you think it takes to prepare for just that first or second call with the hiring manager? Right, it's 45 minutes or an hour, but assuming it's like has some technical component to it, how much time do you think people need to spend on this?
I would say you probably need to spend 4 or 5 hours.
Okay,
Yep. You need to spend 4 or 5 hours
where does that number come from?
on kind of couple, like an hour to research, get a general idea about the company,
Mm-hmm.
um, like 2 hours. So here's kind of the recipe:
Okay.
1 hour for research a company, 2 hours to go over your experiences so you can tell them about it, and then 2 hours to practice technical. Now at
Mm-hmm.
that point, you have to do a bit of a self-assessment. Do I think I'm ready? If you're not ready, then I would go back and say you probably need to spend more than that, and get a coaching session or something like that with
Yeah.
someone that can give you live feedback, or
Right.
asynchronous feedback, however it is. Go
Mm-hmm.
through how confident are you. I'd recommend, people practice in the mirror. That works, but if you practice in front of a live person, I think it usually turns out well. They can give you feedback on what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. You got all the blind spots and everything, and
Correct.
sort of more customized feedback. So cool, man. Yeah. Yeah. So the first 5 hours, maybe let's say 5 hours for that first hiring manager interview, maybe more depending on where you're at, and then,
Correct.
yeah. Okay.
If you're like, okay, I need to know do I know the algorithms? Do I know data structures? What kind of is this cloud technology? I got to go research some cloud technology, things like that.
Got it. Cool, man. Sounds good. Well, I will link back to your coaching profile and anything else you'd like me to share in the show
Cool.
notes, so people can go check you out and have a chat if they'd like. And yeah, I want to say thanks for your time today. Enjoy the conversation. I learned a few things about hiring managers, and I hope people
We're just
listening
people, you know.
just yeah, you're not aliens. So
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was fun. I hope it helps people out there.
all right, thanks so much, Preston. Take care.
All right, bye.
Alrighty, well, that about wraps it up for today. So I hope you enjoyed that conversation and some of Preston's examples and tips. I will link back to his profile as usual. So if you'd like to have a quick chat with him, get some career coaching, mock interview coaching, and other insights for that interview coming up, then you can do that with him directly. And if there's anything else, any questions, comments, feedback you have about this episode, or a request for a type of episode or topic, then please let me know. Drop me an email, which I'll share in the show notes, or leave a comment on YouTube if you're watching this, and I will definitely consider doing that. So I think that about wraps it up for today. So have a great rest of the week, and I will see you next time.